You're up. You're up. Somebody's up, not me.
Good afternoon, counselors. Today we're tasked with coming up with some recommendations that we will in turn give to the council with regard to requests for community donations. Just a little bit of history. We used to have what was called a community grant program where we provided opportunities for our members of our public to come in and make requests. And those requests were processed through the grant guidelines, which I've included at each of your chairs today for review. We reviewed those on a cycle. We did 2 cycles each year and processed applications according to that cycle and distributed funds to the community. After a while of doing that, it was recommended that we amend the process and instead donate $5,000 on an annual basis to the Sweet Home Community Foundation to receive those types of community grant requests. And so since that time, the city has been contributing $5,000 to the Sweet Home Community Foundation to process similar type grants. And I've included a listing of grants that have been funded recently through the Sweet Home Community Foundation on your chair as well. So you'll see where some of those funds have been going, in addition to other funds that the Community Foundation manages for the city. We've been discussing potential options for you, and there are a number of ways you could go. We could re-implement that program if you wanted to bring that back to your committee and continue to process grant applications as we have in the past. We could also consider outsourcing that by providing additional funding assistance to the Sweet Home Community Foundation. And a third option would be to partner with another organization in the community, such as the Chamber of Commerce, and ask them to distribute funds to the business community for similar type events. And so just wanted to have a discussion with you. If you have some recommendations on how you would like to see us move forward, I should note that in the packet of materials that was provided with the agenda, our staff did locate a similar program that has been conducted in the city of Hayward, I think it's California, for processing special event permits, where they actually have a policy in place that is a little bit more in depth than what we've been providing. And that program offers the opportunity to not only be funded in year 1, but also in consecutive years, depending on the success of the event. And under that program, they offer an award to the first year, and that grant amount is higher than in consecutive years, with the hopes that that will help launch a sustainable event in the community moving forward. And then years 2 through 5, they offer a slightly less incentive. And then beyond that, it becomes a classic event, which is funded at the mid-range. What I really like about that particular policy is that they receive the applications on a grant cycle, much as like we would. And they spell out the criteria for that. One of those things being that the grant cannot exceed 20% of the estimated event cost. So they put a cap on that. And also in your packet is a second city, an example of a second city, and that's the city of Dayton, Oregon. And they have a donation program that they have in their community as well. And one of the things that they have spelled out in their program is that 50% of the fundraising has to be accomplished before they can even apply to ask for grant funds from the city. So those are some of the things that you could consider if you are inclined to either re-implement our own grant program that we previously had. If you want to modify it and expand it a bit and spell out additional criteria, or go with another option of perhaps donating additional funds to the Sweet Home Community Foundation and or a separate program through an outside organization such as the Chamber of Commerce. In talking with Brandon Nish, our finance director, and Brandon's online, it looks like, we would be able to fund some of this out of our general fund on an annual basis. And probably between $20,000 to $30,000 we could make available, and that would be coming from our general fund. Much of these applications that have been coming through have been funded through our economic development money, and that money is limited, as you know. And it was, I believe it was initially created to serve as the facade funding for our downtown community. And since that time, we've, made some contributions at the request of the public out of that fund, but it continues to dwindle down. And so the question would be, would you make the recommendation that we continue to fund out of that fund or out of the general fund? So at this point, I'd just really like to open it up for some discussion among each of you, and so that you can kind of get your questions out there and some thoughts, share any thoughts that you may have on the program for moving forward.
Any questions?
So,
Not you.
sorry, Mr. Chairman, on the Hayward application, I particularly like the reporting process that demonstrates transparency and accountability for public funds. We have not done that in the past, and I think that it's very important that if we do give public funds, that we know how they benefited the public and the accountability for those funds.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I liked some of the things in the Hayward forms, their process, but it seemed a little bit daunting. But I do like to have transparency. I appreciated some of the questions on the Dayton form, because it sounds like some of the questions that counselors has asked. So, for instance, how will the funds? Not that how will the funds be used? How does your project or event benefit or bring honor to the Dayton community? I think that's kind of what I understand the counselors want to understand from events, if they're going to bring benefit or honor to the community.
Sorry, I'll turn this off.
You don't need to leave. You could go.
Yeah, I can read.
Are you tired?
I was curious about the what's in the CAD fund right now, and I know I received an email with that figure, and also Brandon had mentioned maybe some of it would be replenished through a grant program, and I was just curious, where does that stand?
I can answer some of this, and Brandon, if you can hear me, maybe you want to chime in first.
Sure. So the city spent about $250,000 of a $450,000 budget on SEEP, on the SEEP program, and grant funds distributed to the CDBG program, the Community Development Block Grant. We will recoup about $122,000, and that is already processing and should be it's in our funds, and it's being recorded in Springbrook for this current fiscal period. So in future reports, it will show. So there's probably anywhere between $300,000 and $350,000, I would guess, left in the fund at the end of the fiscal year, which is less than we've had previously.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think no matter what we do, we should do it on the budget cycle. I think that we establish it at the beginning of the year, budget year, and then we stick with that.
I think that's a good idea. I'm really concerned about taking money out of the 200 and whatever thousand it is now for these kinds of things, although they're probably good things. But I thought, in my opinion, that that was for cleaning up the city and doing businesses for those things. And so if we did $30,000 in our budget, we would already got rid of 2 of them. We wouldn't have any more because we already gave 15 to one and the other one wants 15.
I believe it was 10.
It was
10, whatever it is.
10,000.
Okay, so then we'd have 3 or maybe 2, whatever we're going to end up with. That's not very net. That's, to me, that if we put a limit on it, the $5,000, that's, which is apparently what we did in the past, I think. I wasn't on this committee at the time, or on this thing at that time, but I'm concerned that the money that we put in there for the economic development was not for a band to come down to town. It just, in my opinion, it just wasn't put there for that. Can it be a good thing for the city? Absolutely. I think it can, but we need the council to say, yeah, this is okay. And then we need to put a specific limit on it and not go over it. That's my opinion. If it's going to be $5,000, then that's what it'll be. And we can move on. That's just my opinion. And I don't know how you guys think about that, but
Was there a limit in our last program?
It was.
It was 5,000.
Says 500. Says 500 on there. Oh, that's an opportunity thing.
yeah, I'm pretty sure it was $5,000 with the limit. And the only thing that we did for the economic development money was it was limited too, but the mayor could say, well, we could upgrade that to a certain number. If I'm correct, because it was 10,000, I think, and that we moved that to 15,000. Is that not what we
The
did?
council changed the rules
Yes,
to
and-
increase
yeah.
the maximum award to
Yeah.
15,000
So,
per project.
On the SEEP program.
and I would not have a problem giving it to the chamber, giving that to them and let them figure out where it's going to go. It would take the pressure off of us from having to make decisions for this business or that business or whatever. And maybe it's not the right way to go. I don't know.
Well, I would like to explore an MOU with the chamber for a tour, maybe perhaps them forming a tourism committee that's responsible for this very specific thing, and determining the guidelines to get it out from underneath the city council. That's part of what they're supposed to be doing. I don't know their capabilities of doing that right now, but I think that's something we could explore with them as an avenue.
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, you
from the staff perspective, one of the questions of when it comes to these kinds of events, the previous grants that we gave were nonprofit type activities. We are starting to see for-profit businesses asking for things. And so one of the main, I guess, benefits of having the chamber involved would be to have a nonprofit umbrella under which for-profit enterprises could participate in this program. Essentially, they'd have to partner with the chamber and have the chamber be the applicant for that event, which would allow it to be funded. Whereas otherwise, you'd have to be okay with giving public money to a private business.
So Blair, would it be a possibility that if you go to the chamber for a $5,000 donation, you should be a member of the chamber?
I think
I know
that's
you can't play
certainly on
force
the
that.
table. I would, that all would depend on whatever MOU was entered into with the
Mhm.
chambers, but certainly there could be restrictions placed on the money
Yeah,
when it comes to types of events, whether they're open to the public, whether they're free or there's some level of free attendance, where they may be located, that kind of thing. You could put all sorts of restrictions on that, I suppose, but it really should focus on whatever the goals of giving that funding to the chamber are. And then it would be up to the chamber to determine that, their process. I would think the chamber membership would be a good thing.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
if I could, I'm all for this process and also to have an MOU with the chamber. I think they can vet out these type of issues. Well, I'm a little concerned about this particular request that initiated this because we did give $10,000 to a band to come to town when we gave $10,000 to the Jamboree. And
Stupid.
it's okay.
I can't make it turn off. It's horrible.
We could sit on it.
I could do that. It does cut it down. Just throw it out in the street. There, that was pretty easy.
We
Um,
don't have enough technology.
No.
I'm a little concerned because I don't want Sweet Home to miss the opportunity that's in front of us right now. And I think that this event is already large enough that it would be good to have Sweet Home's name on it as somebody who's supporting this type of development within the city of Sweet Home. I think it is a big event that's going to be happening, and I think it's already being talked about all over the United States. And when the city of Sweet Home doesn't step into this, I feel like we're shooting ourselves in the foot once again on something that we could benefit from. And the city of Sweet Home's image, which is something that was one of the goals that we had, could be improved if we participated and joined forces with this event.
Well, I do agree with that. I do. My question will always be where are we going to get the money, because you know how things go. But I agree, and I don't know that $15,000 is the number we need or they need. And of course, this is all going to go to council, so that's a different situation. I just don't know. Brandon, do we have $15,000 to give them?
I think that depends.
Go ahead.
I think that depends on where you want to pull it from, and certainly council has that ability to determine that. We've got available spending, existing expenditure authority in the general fund. If you wanted to pull it from that for this year, we could certainly take it out of the economic development fund. There are options available.
Just remember that the next cycle around, give them 15,000, whatever, don't big deal about. Next cycle around, we better add 5,000 to the Jamboree.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would not recommend that we give $15,000 to this event. That's not something that I think 10,000 would be just fine. And I know that they've already come up with a majority of the funds for this event and have had people donate weekly to the event. So we're not giving the majority of the amount there, but I would not recommend the $15,000. I also would say that this is definitely an economic development event. So I think $10,000 could be taken from KED for right now. And then we get on track with this process and get a process in place for any future contributions. I noticed in both of these other examples that were given, the Jamboree would not have qualified because it's a ticketed event, which is what the Jamboree is. So we've given to a large event that is an annual event that happens here, which is something that's near and dear to Sweet Home. But I think this next opportunity is something that naturally has exploded around the United States, and I think it's something that we could hop on and really continue to move Sweet Home forward in the eyes of others around the United States. So I think 10,000 would be sufficient for this.
Brandon, what would be, I'm going to throw you under the bus. What would be your what would be the best for you think for us to do, to use it out of the general fund or out of the money from the economic development? Which would be the best?
Quite honestly, I think from a fiscal perspective, it's the economic development fund that has the money for it. From a from a process standpoint, I think that the council would have to determine that this is an economic development event, which it sounds like Councilor Coleman indicated that she believed that it was. If you believe it's an economic development based, if you believe it will provide economic development opportunities, then I think the justification is there to take it from the economic development fund.
Okay.
So I think when we developed the process, one of the things that we should talk about was what exactly does the event do to promote tourism or promote the city? I mean, I don't know if this event that's coming up, if they sent brochures about the city, if they touted the camping, the hiking, the boating, opportunity for recreation, or did they just send out that this is going to be a whatever it is, a cook-off or whatever it is. So to me, it needs to be promoting the community, not just the event. And personally, I wouldn't give 10,000. I think 5 is good enough.
I think one thing that we need to keep in mind too is Radiator Supply in and of itself is a nationally known business, which will bring in business owners who might have interest to invest in the city of Sweet Home because of who they are.
Actually, it's an international business. Send them to all over the country, all over the world. I don't particularly care so much about how much we give, but we need to be more. We need to set a balance of what we're going to do and how much we're going to do. And I don't know if that's going to be difference between giving the chamber $1 or giving Radiator Supply $5. I don't know what that answer is. That'll be up to 5 of us or 4 of us. So I think this is a good plan. I really do. And I really would be on board with the chamber helping and maybe even taking that over. And we just fund that money to flow that money to them. Hopefully that would work out.
With accountability.
Yes, with some accountability. That'd be a big thing for, I think, all of the council, because, you know, we had this situation in the chamber a long time ago, and that's gone, thank goodness. And I think they're doing a good job. So I think they could cover this. I do. I think they could. And so I think we should probably work something out. And if that's up to you guys, make your decision here. I think it's a good thing to do is work it out with the chamber, see what we can come up with, and then if we can in this budget, Brandon, if we could get that in there somehow, that'd be great. If it doesn't happen until next year, then I guess we'll wait till next year. But I'm sure you can do it. So
what I'm hearing is that you would like us to refer the decision on the Radiator Supply House application to a future council meeting for consideration, utilizing economic development funds up to $15,000? Or do you have a specific request on how much you would like to donate?
I think for me, 5 is the maximum, but that would be up to the council. I think 15 is too much.
So just to reconsider the application and to have the council make a decision at a future meeting?
I think that's what I would be okay with.
Okay, so we'll put that back on. But as far as exploring the MOU with the Chamber of Commerce, I guess what we would like to have is a little bit more input from the committee on what you might be looking for. So for them to take over the entire program, would you like to have oversight in developing the criteria for that, or would you be leaving that up to the chamber?
I think that having some oversight, at least some input into how the criteria is developed, what the criteria, it is public money, so we do need to be responsible for that. That there be some accountability, and then perhaps the discussion about whether or not they are chamber members. I think we'd have to talk about that.
So what we could do as staff is first of all, reach out to the chamber and see if there's interest in them facilitating the program on our behalf. And then if there is, we could reconvene this committee and talk about more details on what you would like included. Staff could put together a draft agreement for your consideration and our criteria, and then you could amend that, as part of your committee meeting before we presented it again to the chamber for consideration.
I'd be okay with that. We have to get something together. Blair's got all the time in the world. He doesn't have to worry about that.
Blair, did you have anything you wanted to add to that request?
So the only thing I add is just the caveat that you already know that we don't know about the chamber's capacity to do this, and they have basically one employee and the rest volunteers. So I think in some way they probably could, because again, we're not giving so much money that they're going to be swamped, but it's still going to be work. So there's that. I think it would be good to get your feedback on whatever restrictions you would be comfortable with when it comes to that. Do you want to have it mainly for nonprofits? Do you want to have it, non-ticketed type events? Or can there be a hybrid where you have an event that is partially ticketed and partially free, which is what the Music and Brews event that the Jamboree is putting on is going to be. They're only going to be ticketed in the evenings, and then the rest of the time will be free. You talked about the advertising the community as a whole. We could include that in there in what we require, so that it influences the application process, that people who are asking for this money have to defend that and have to present that information. But we can certainly get meet with the chamber and get a draft together, and then with your input on those restrictions, put those into the agreement. If I may, I would like to circle back to the request from Radiator Supply House. I'm hearing 5 to 10 is the range from this meeting. Are there any restrictions on that funding? Anything you want to ask of Radiator Supply if they get that funding? Any recommendation? Because we talked about advertising the good of the community and things like that. Do we want to include that in the ask, or in the grant to them, essentially, that they
Yes,
need to do that?
sorry.
And any other items that you'd like to require of them in exchange for this fund?
Mr. Chairman, they have a Facebook page that's followed by, I think, 50,000 people. Our Facebook pages do not reach anything close to that, but they also have a reach beyond that to other organizations. And I know that they've already committed to people who've committed funds to this event, that they will be advertising those people on their Facebook page for a specific amount of time. So I would say that we would ask that they would advertise the City of Sweet Home. I know we have some videos of the City of Sweet Home. We have other items we can give to them to post on their social media as well. But we would anticipate that if we invest in this, that our logo and our information would be posted on any printed items. I think there's a few things we can ask of them.
Certainly the chamber has plenty of brochures and so forth of the city, of the kinds of things, events that are going on or can go on in the city, activities, and they could be distributed at the event. I think promoting the city is what we're looking at. I mean, that's what economic development is, as far as we're concerned at this point. So whatever they can do to promote the city.
If could be, the chamber could have a booth there, or if somebody could be there with investment opportunities within the City of Sweet Home, like you, Blair, saying, we have property that can be purchased, because I don't know if anybody's flying in from Dubai, but I know they have connections there. So.
Well, I think that you're absolutely right. And I think that it would be nice if they put that into their program to tell everybody that we're in Sweet Home Oregon. They probably do that part of it. And let them know what we do have here. Chamber can do that. We have those pamphlet things that we have, and I mean, I think it should be almost mandatory that they say, hey, you know what, come to Sweet Home. And I think, well, I can go talk to Wes, or you can talk to Wes or Will or whoever, and put. I don't think they'd have an issue with that. I really don't, because they love Sweet Home. You know, they almost moved to Texas once. They almost moved. They were this close, and they stayed here because they like this community, and they're really pretty good guys. Anyway, so I don't want to
So
put
did
that
you
out.
want to make a formal motion to refer this back to the council with a recommendation that they fund it with economic development funds between $5,000 and $10,000? With a caveat that they also promote the city of Sweet Home as a sponsor of the event?
Yes,
Yeah.
so moved.
And if we could come to a conclusion here about, well, maybe she wants 5, you want 10, maybe we could do 75 and let the council let them pick the number. That way, I won't be on the bus thing. That's where it's going to come anyway. It's not going to be us making that decision how much to give them. I think that's the way that's going to work. So
Out is if 3 of you are here and we know it's 5 and 10, you only gotta get one
yes,
solid.
yeah,
You don't wanna be out there, I wouldn't think, back up arguing about 15 if you know 3 people aren't gonna do it.
yeah.
So. there
So
was a
are you
motion.
saying we should make a specific recommendation?
I don't think so, I think you gotta
Okay.
deal between 5 and 10. I just don't see you want to argue about 15 if 3 of you know that isn't where you're gonna go.
That's a good point. So
So
I
the-
think we need to get, at our next council meeting, I think we need to get that part of it cleared up. Get that thing taken care of, the 5 to 10 or whatever we're gonna do. Is that, you think that we should do that and not hold them up in the air for a while?
Yeah,
Or-
I think that would be good to
Yeah,
take
me too.
action,
Yeah.
recommend to the council that they take action on the
Yeah.
request for the donation.
And then we need to ask if we want to take that economic development or if we can find it somewhere else. I think I'll,
you'd be best in economic
I think the recommendation would
too.
be from the
I do too.
economic development
I
funds.
wasn't sure of that, but Blair, he convinced me.
All right.
Oh, no, it was her. It was her, not you. Don't. So if we could get
Sorry,
that
Brandon.
cleared up and get them, what they need, and then, and if you could talk to Will, or I can talk to Will. Or-
We can include that in,
Yes,
and I think I would love to have a booth there. I think that's something
Yes.
that we should do at all sorts of events.
yeah, we could do that
Especially-
with the chamber and somebody from the council.
Yep.
I'll be there too, so that would,
You just want to eat barbecue.
yes.
I'll be there to promote Sweet Home.
Is it a ticketed event? I mean, anybody can walk in?
But you don't get free food. You have to pay for the food.
Oh,
And
I
I'd be
didn't
willing to
know that.
bet that it's really good. It's from Texas or something. That's what, it's the best in the world.
It's the best in the world.
It
It's
is-
amazing
It
food.
is the best. Well, okay, so
So-
have you got what you need there?
So I
Um,
think I heard Councilor Coleman make a motion. I did not get. a
Oh, I'll
second.
second it. I'll second it.
Really, do you have what you need for the motion?
So, all in favor?
Aye.
We need to do the roll call. Oh, I'm okay for this.
So
one.
refer this back to the council for consideration with a recommended donation amount between $5,000 and $10,000 with the caveat that they promote the city of Sweet Home at the event and that it be funded through economic development funds.
Then also I would, do we need a motion to explore the possibility of partnering with the chamber for the future of this kind of process?
Yes, I would recommend that you make that on a separate motion after your vote. And yes. I would
Okay,
that
okay.
recommendation.
And then with them develop a process? Is that,
If you would like to do that, if you would like staff to start a draft, or if you would like to, work through the details, you can tell us what you would like to do moving forward. I think what I would recommend is that we actually have another meeting to kind of go through all of those details once we know if the chamber is
Yeah.
willing to do it or not, because it could change based on if you're going to be approving the applications or if they're going to.
okay,
Just to speak into that draft a little bit, if you don't mind. I think that any money that we give to the chamber needs to go towards, I like what we have set up with the Sweet Home Community Foundation, because those are nonprofits, those are smaller amounts, those are like really specific needs. But if we're giving money for economic development to the chamber, I think it should be larger events that promote the city of Sweet Home and have the capability of promoting it well throughout the valley or beyond the state of Oregon. And so I I'm hoping not to see an event list of 0 to 10 guests, or, like this has something much larger than that. But I also would like to see that the funds, we are not providing more than a certain percentage of the funds to the event as well. I like that caveat as well. So those are just a few of the parameters I think we need to stick within.
And did it say that they have to have 50% of it before we give them money? Is that what I read?
That's a possible rule.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, that could be something we could work in there too. So,
Yeah, that was also on.
That's what City of Dayton had, I believe.
yeah.
Yes.
I like the fact that on this Hayward one, that it talked about the fact that they talked about it as a special event support, and then they defined what special event is. And I think that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Something that's maybe yearly, but is unusual.
Yeah.
I also like the 3 levels of the events, the new event, the classic event, and the signature event, just with it provides good parameters.
Right.
So,
Right.
Well, I think that the chamber can do this. I think because when they did that cut the gut thing, I was shocked. I mean, it was the middle of COVID, and they made that thing a total good thing. I mean, there was probably several hundred cars that went through here, and whether and they did it twice, I think. So it's a pretty big deal. Now I don't know how much money that brings to us. I did to the city. I don't. There was a lot of people here.
Chairman, I think this brings to mind some things you should be concerned about, because if suddenly you have a pot of money available, it gets all sorts of people's attention. The people that will grab the attention of the very first are people who already put on events.
Mhm.
And so right now, or previously, when it came to the Jamboree in August, the regular event that they put on, the city's contribution to that has all been in-kind services, not monetary contribution. Same with Cut the Gut and the other special events that the chamber does. We've done plenty of in-kind donations, shutting down streets,
Mhm.
police protection, public works guys out there with equipment, that kind of thing. But we haven't given monetary contributions.
Yeah.
So my prediction would be the very first applicants you're going to see are going to be the chamber events that already happen. And so we should be thinking about how you want to deal with that, or whether you want to deal with that. And if is this devoted toward new events? Is it devoted toward, how do we make sure your goals are met when it comes to the rules that we're putting around this? Because we do need to keep out for those unintended consequences.
Mr. Chairman, if I might add to that.
Yes.
I think one of the other things to consider is what happens if that funding that is provided is not divvied out in its totality. Does that stay with the chamber? Does that come back to the city? What that might look like. So something to consider, I think, as we develop this, is what would the council like to see with those funds that aren't used, if any?
Well, Brandon, my thought on that would be is if we give them, let's say we give them $30,000 and they don't spend it all, then they only get the number the leftover money will be taken away from the money that would be my question. Whether you give them 30,000, they spend 20 and they've got 10 left, and we give them 20 the next year. I don't know if that's the right way to go, but I think that would be reasonable.
And I think certainly that's up to whatever you all want to see. I wouldn't necessarily advocate in any direction. Just something to consider.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does it become chamber dollars, or do we recoup in some fashion?
Well, it's still public money, so from my perception, it should be returned if it's not spent.
For example, the SEEP grants that we give are handed out on a reimbursement basis.
Mhm.
They have to prove first that they've spent it on the project, and then they submit those receipts, that proof of payment that fits in with the project, and then the city cuts a check for reimbursement. With special events, that's a little tricky because a lot of these expenses come as they're gearing up for that event, and they may not have the cash flow to be able to run it all and then get reimbursed. That's a question to be concerned about. But also, how are you going to get to claw it back? You know, with Radiator Supply House, if they have this event, suppose something happens between now and then and it doesn't happen. What ability do you actually have of clawing that money back? Depending on how you give it out, you may not have any ability at all.
Mhm.
So we do need to be recognizing that once we pay it out, we pretty much need to consider it gone.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I also would not necessarily recommend a full 30,000 being given to the chamber. I'd like to start small and then see how it goes. I don't want to see a bunch of small events come and ask for that money. I think it needs to be used just for larger events, but that's just my personal opinion. I think we do need to watch how it's given out, but also can it be given out on a reimbursement basis? Maybe moving forward, it can be.
You also don't have to let go of the purse strings either. I mean, we could have an MOU with the chamber on what we're going to fund, but we're not actually giving them the money until we get a project that satisfies the criteria, and then the city cuts a check for it. That's certainly a possibility, and you could put in rules dictating, you know, what's the cap for how much a single event can get. We talked about the percentage of costs and things like that, how much fundraising has to be done prior to the city giving any money. We can include all those things in there to restrict and protect the city from paying out for events that may not happen or may not have the reach that we want them to have. Plus, the chamber if the chamber were to be in charge of the process, then you'd want to have some rules in place of what if the chamber itself wants to apply. And so how do you deal with that conflict of interest as they're making the judgment on who gets funding?
Mr. Chairman, I have one more question regarding this too. Has the city of Sweet Home given to some of these events before? So Cut the Gut, has the city of Sweet Home contributed to that event when that event came around?
In kind,
In kind, just in kind?
as far as I know. Might have been some prizes at our station.
It's been prizes, and I believe that we've also been responsible for the printing of their maps and such that we've provided in the past.
Because I've seen the city logo on those things when I've participated, wondering what did we do to get it on there? So thank you.
We printed it.
Well, and I think some of the things, the cards that we gave out for the point, I could be wrong, but I'm not 100% sure of that. And man, there's a lot of stuff here you're gonna have to do.
The more you talk about it, the more there is to watch.
How long are you gonna be here, Christy?
Yeah, definitely a lot of things still to explore and
Yeah.
talk about.
Yeah, because I would be willing to bet that if we put this to the chamber, that I know of one business is probably gonna, well, nonprofit, is gonna come back to the city. They probably won't go to the chamber. That would be the Jamboree. I would guess. I'm just guessing. I could be wrong, but because if we had $30,000, they'd take half of it. If that's the way that worked out, I would $10,000 of it. They'd take a third of it. Anyway.
And I really liked Councilor Coleman's suggestion that we, start small, especially if we end up funding this out of the general fund. There's always competing priorities in that fund, and it may not be sustainable over a long period of time, given the rising costs of everything.
Yeah.
And so that's something to consider. Also, you might want to consider, how much do you want to really contribute to expanding new events in your community versus funding, nonprofit events and special things that the nonprofits are doing, and consider, maybe rebalancing some of those donations.
Well, I think what Councilor Coleman brought up about the three types of events on that Hayward thing is really good as far as new events, classic events, and signature events. I think it's good to define that.
Yeah. And I think, I think that, Blair, I think you're absolutely right. I think that we probably should just say, you figure it out, and then write you a check. I think that might be the best way for accountability for that part of it. That's just something, I think that might be a good idea.
Well, that's how we operate with their quarterly reports.
Yes.
So that it wouldn't be unusual to do it that way.
They demonstrate that they've met all the conditions
Yeah.
of the grant requirements, and then we pay them within 30 days or something. Mhm. Anything else that you'd like us to consider for this first discussion with the chamber?
I don't know that, I think we covered it pretty good. So if there's something else comes up, of course, we have to deal with that. But I really can't see much of a reason to have anything else. I think we covered them up pretty good.
And then when would we hold our next meeting of this committee? Do we do that monthly, or are they as needed?
As
As
needed.
needed.
We don't, we just, whenever she calls a meeting, isn't that the way it works? When Julie tells us to get her down here?
Whenever she tells us
Yes,
we need
right,
to.
get down here and then we'll discuss it.
However, whatever you feel is important.
Yes,
Okay.
whenever
Well,
you guys get your stuff done or whatever, you just call it. We'll be here.
that sounds good.
I do have one more thing. I think that we should, as bring up to the council that perhaps we have shot our wad, so to speak, for this year, so that that we do not get inundated as we begin the new budget process. That we're not,
Yeah, and we have to come up with
don't
it.
come to us anymore, but because we're doing budget, so we don't know yet. I don't know how that's stated, but
We don't even know if we can afford to put more than $30,000 in there, unless we do the economic development stuff. If that's what we choose to do every time. We'll have to see how that council wants to work that out.
I think that one thing you may want to consider to address things like that, for at least for the rest of the year, is whether there should be anything in the council rules about granting requests at the same meeting. If somebody has a fiscal request, what is your process for approving that? Should it be immediately allowed to be immediately approved at the same meeting, or should it have a process of examination for that request?
But Robert, you have the revised council rules, which we have not taken to council yet.
Yeah.
So, if maybe we could bring them back to us and we'll look at that.
They're outside of the meeting to tell him what I think about him bringing up things to change on the roof.
Okay, but
Forget I said anything.
but we do have council rules. Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Anything else?
No, I think we've got it.
Did we actually vote on that motion?
No, you haven't.
Just, sorry.
Dave just said he approved, so.
Yeah.
Is that how it went? Okay, good.
That's good enough.
Sounds good.
What else do you need?
All those in favor of the motion?
Aye,
Hi.
Aye.
we're done. Thank you.